There is a moment that happens quietly, almost invisibly. You're sitting across from someone, a colleague, a date, a friend, maybe someone you trust just enough to lower your guard. The conversation feels safe, human. You feel the urge to explain yourself, to share something real, a truth about your past, your ambition, your fear, your hopes. And in that moment, you believe you are being authentic, honest, brave. But what you don't realize is this: you are not sharing a truth. You are handing over a weapon. Machiavelli watched this exact scene play out hundreds of times in Renaissance Italy. Men with talent, men with intelligence, men with potential, not destroyed by enemies, but undone by their own openness. They revealed themselves too early to the wrong people. In a world that does not reward transparency, it studies it. Here is the uncomfortable reality most people refuse to accept. Human beings are not listening to understand you. They are listening to locate you, to map your limits, to find leverage. And the moment you reveal too much, you give them permission to use it. Machiavelli wrote that men are simple, driven by immediate needs, and easily deceived. That sounds cynical until you see it clearly. People are always scanning for advantage, not consciously, not maliciously all the time, but instinctively. Just like a trader looks for weakness in a market, or a predator senses hesitation in prey, your openness becomes data, and data becomes strategy. That is why the first thing Machiavelli would tell you never to show is your full capability. Most men think showing competence earns respect. They believe laying all their cards on the table proves value. In reality, it defines their ceiling. The moment people know exactly what you can do, they stop imagining what you might do. Mystery collapses into measurement. Think of yourself like a fortress. The walls that are fully visible invite siege planning. The hidden tunnels, the unseen reserves, those are what win wars. Sun Tzu understood this long before modern psychology ever put words to it. Appear weak when you are strong, and strong when you are weak. Not as deception, but as defense. Yet look around. People overshare their wins, their skills, their numbers, their progress. They narrate their growth in real time. They believe exposure equals power. What it actually creates is predictability. In the corporate world, this mistake is almost guaranteed to punish you. You perform well, and you make sure everyone knows it. You talk about your deals, your output, your results. At first, you're praised. Then something subtle happens. Your performance becomes expected. The extraordinary becomes baseline. And worse, you've just given everyone else the blueprint to compete against you. When people know your limits, they know how to beat you. When they know your rhythm, they know how to disrupt you. When they know your strengths, they know exactly where to attack when you stumble. Strategic men never reveal their full hand. They keep something in reserve. A skill no one expects. A capability no one has accounted for. Because power is not in being impressive, it is in being surprising. The shock of the unexpected is psychologically devastating. It destabilizes hierarchies. It breaks assumptions. It forces recalibration. That is real dominance. Look at how empires are built in silence. For years, Amazon was dismissed as a bookstore, a simple operation, a harmless idea. While competitors laughed, infrastructure was being built underneath the surface: logistics, data, cloud computing. By the time the world understood the full scope of what was coming, resistance was no longer possible. The power wasn't in what was shown, it was in what was hidden. This is the essence of Machiavellian restraint. You do not deny your ability. You obscure it. You do not lie about who you are. You simply refuse to reveal everything. Think of your potential like a blade kept in shadow. The moment you flash it unnecessarily, people start measuring distance. But when they don't know it's there, they move carelessly. And carelessness is vulnerability. So the rule is simple, but brutally difficult. Never show your full strength. Give people enough to respect you, but not enough to predict you. Let them underestimate you just slightly. That underestimation becomes your advantage. A man who is fully understood is already defeated. A man who remains partially unknown remains dangerous. This feels unnatural because you've been conditioned to believe openness is virtue. That honesty is protection. That transparency builds trust. Machiavelli knew better. He understood that trust without strategy is exposure, and exposure without power is self-destruction. You are not here to be decoded. You are here to move. In a world where everyone is broadcasting their inner world, the man who withholds becomes an anomaly, and anomalies command attention. Attention breeds caution, and caution is the first form of respect. Your strength does not need an audience. It needs timing. It needs placement. It needs silence. Because once people believe they've seen all of you, they stop fearing what you might become. And that is when they begin preparing to replace you, undermine you, or step over you. Keep something hidden, always. When the moment comes, and it always comes, the reveal will not just surprise them, it will redefine you. The second thing Machiavelli would warn you never to reveal is your plans. This is where most men destroy themselves long before failure ever arrives. Not because their ideas are weak, but because they announce them too early. They confuse movement with momentum. They mistake excitement for progress. And they hand the future to people who were never meant to touch it. You've seen this pattern. You feel the spark of something new, a business idea, a career shift, a personal transformation. Before a single brick is laid, you tell someone, then another, then you post it. You talk about where you're going, who you're becoming, what you're about to do. It feels productive, it feels motivating, it feels real. And then, somehow, it dies. Machiavelli understood this psychological trap with brutal clarity. He wrote that promises belong to the past, but broken words serve the present. Not because people are evil, but because people are unstable. Their loyalty shifts with emotion, envy, fear, and convenience. The moment you reveal your plan, it no longer belongs solely to you. It enters the minds of others, and once it does, it becomes vulnerable. When you tell someone your plans, 3 dangerous things happen at once. First, you relieve internal pressure. Your mind mistakes being heard for being accomplished. The tension that should have fueled execution dissipates. You feel lighter, but weaker. The fire that should have been reserved for action leaks out through words. Second, you invite doubt. Even well-meaning people project their limitations onto your vision. They poke holes. They ask questions disguised as concern. They warn you about risks you already know, not because they want you to fail, but because your ambition threatens the equilibrium of their identity. Your movement forces comparison, and comparison breeds resistance. Third, and most dangerous, you expose your direction. Direction creates anticipation. Anticipation creates countermoves. The moment someone knows where you're headed, they can block you, slow you, copy you, or quietly position themselves ahead of you. Not out of hatred, out of self-interest. Machiavelli observed that men rarely attack strength directly. They undermine it indirectly before it fully forms. This is why winners move in silence. Silence is not secrecy born of fear. It is secrecy born of strategy. It is the discipline of protecting something fragile until it becomes irreversible. Think of a seed beneath the soil. The moment it breaks the surface, it becomes visible, and visibility invites damage. Wind, animals, drought. But underground, it grows uninterrupted, unjudged, unchallenged. By the time it emerges, it is already rooted. Modern culture encourages the opposite. Announce your goals. Share your journey. Let the world watch you grow. What they don't tell you is that being watched changes behavior. It makes you perform instead of build. It tempts you to adjust direction based on applause instead of alignment. Machiavelli would call this a fatal error. Power is not built under observation. It is built in isolation, pressure, and patience. Look at every major strategic move in history. Rarely was the plan revealed before the result. Apple didn't announce concepts. They unveiled realities. They didn't ask permission to disrupt. They presented a finished fact and forced the world to adapt. This is not coincidence. It is doctrine. Your plans are sacred. They are not conversation pieces. They are not social currency. They are not motivation tools for other people. They are weapons, and weapons are never displayed before they are used. The strongest position in any negotiation, relationship, or hierarchy is being able to walk away. Plans give you that leverage, but only if they remain yours. The moment others know your next move, your leverage erodes. They sense urgency. They sense dependency. They sense need. And need is always punished. A man who reveals his plan announces where his attention is trapped. A man who stays silent keeps the ability to pivot, withdraw, or strike from a different angle entirely. Silence also creates psychological imbalance in others. When people don't know what you're building, they speculate. Speculation leads to uncertainty. Uncertainty leads to hesitation. And hesitation slows reaction time. That is dominance. This does not mean lying. It means withholding. You are not obligated to narrate your evolution. You are not required to explain your trajectory. You owe no one a preview of your future. Speak when the outcome is inevitable. Reveal when resistance is useless. Until then, move quietly. The third thing Machiavelli warned never to show is your resources, your money, your assets, your true level of security. The moment people know what you have, everything about their behavior changes. Not consciously, instinctively. Wealth, in any form, alters social gravity. It attracts attention, expectation, entitlement, and resentment. Machiavelli watched princes surrounded not by allies, but by parasites, people who smiled, flattered, and waited for opportunity. He understood a dark truth about human nature. People forget emotional wounds faster than financial ones. They forgive insults. They do not forgive inequality. When you display what you possess, you invite comparison. Comparison breeds envy. Envy corrodes relationships quietly, then violently. People who once supported you begin to resent you, not because you harmed them, but because your success highlights their stagnation. And resentment is dangerous precisely because it feels justified to the one who carries it. This is why the most powerful individuals often look ordinary, not because they lack abundance, but because they understand camouflage. Quiet wealth is protected wealth. Loud wealth becomes a target. The less people know about what you have, the safer you are. The less they can calculate, the less they can plan. Your resources, financial, emotional, strategic, must remain ambiguous. Let people guess. Guessing keeps them cautious. Certainty emboldens them. Machiavelli would tell you this plainly. What is visible can be taken. What is hidden must be imagined, and imagination restrains action far more effectively than fear ever could. Silence protects growth. Privacy protects power. And in a world obsessed with exposure, the man who conceals becomes untouchable. The fourth thing Machiavelli would tell you never to reveal is your weaknesses. This is where modern culture becomes actively dangerous. You've been taught that vulnerability is strength, that sharing your wounds makes you real, that openness builds connection. That sounds noble. It sounds evolved. And in a perfect world, maybe it would be true. But Machiavelli did not write for a perfect world. He wrote for the one that actually exists, a world where information is never forgotten, where emotions are stored, not healed, where people collect details about you quietly, then wait. And when circumstances shift, when alliances crack, when respect erodes, when tension enters the room, those details are no longer truths. They become weapons. Every weakness you reveal creates a point of entry. Tell someone you doubt yourself, and that doubt will be mirrored back to you the moment they want leverage. Admit you fear abandonment, and that fear becomes a tool for control. Confess past failures, and those failures will resurface precisely when your authority needs to be undermined. This is not cruelty. This is human nature under pressure. Machiavelli was brutally clear about this dynamic. He understood that love makes you accessible, but fear keeps distance. And distance is safety. A man who is too open invites familiarity. Familiarity dissolves respect. And once respect is gone, exploitation follows naturally. This does not mean you become hollow or dishonest. It means you become selective. There is a profound difference between authenticity and exposure. Authenticity is alignment with your values. Exposure is handing unearned access to your interior world. The first builds strength. The second dismantles it. Strategic men protect their weaknesses the same way they protect their assets. Not because they are ashamed, but because they understand value. Anything valuable must be guarded. Think of your inner life like a vault. You do not hand out the combination because someone asks nicely. You grant access only after proof, time, and consistency. And even then, you never reveal everything. Your enemies are not always visible. Often, they are former allies, former friends, former intimates. Relationships change. Power dynamics shift. And the information you once shared in trust does not dissolve with affection. It remains, waiting. That is why Machiavelli would tell you to work on your weaknesses in silence. Improve privately. Heal privately. Struggle privately. Seek counsel only from those who have demonstrated loyalty over time, not intensity in the moment. The world does not need to know your scars to respect your strength. In fact, the more visible your cracks, the more people will test them. Armor exists for a reason. The fifth thing you must never show is your emotional reactions, especially anger, frustration, or hurt. The moment someone knows they can affect your emotional state, you have handed them control. Sun Tzu warned of this long before modern psychology put terms to it. If your opponent is easily angered, irritate him. Emotional predictability is tactical weakness. Watch how quickly power shifts in a conversation when someone loses composure. The room recalibrates instantly. Authority drains. Respect thins. Control transfers. Machiavelli observed princes lose entire territories not because their armies were weak, but because their emotions were ungoverned. An insult triggered rage. Rage triggered impulsive action. And impulsive action invites defeat. Emotion clouds judgment, and judgment is the core of power. The most dangerous man in any room is not the loudest or the most aggressive. It is the one who does not react. Insults slide off him. Provocation finds no traction. Attacks are met with stillness. That stillness is terrifying because it denies feedback. People cannot locate themselves in relation to you. They don't know if they succeeded or failed. And uncertainty creates psychological pressure. In modern life, this plays out constantly. In meetings, in relationships, in negotiations. Someone makes a passive-aggressive comment and waits for a reaction. They are not attacking you. They are testing you. If you react emotionally, they've learned something valuable. Your trigger. But if you pause, smile slightly, and continue without engagement, you've done something far more powerful. You've refused the frame. You've maintained control. You've made them visible while remaining opaque. Emotional discipline is not suppression. It is selection. You choose when to express, when to conceal, and when to do nothing at all. Silence in the face of provocation is not weakness, it is dominance. Because the man who controls his emotions controls the tempo of every interaction he enters. Others move around him. He does not move around them. The sixth thing Machiavelli would never show is who he truly values. This one cuts deeper because it touches love. The people you care about most are your greatest vulnerability. Not because love is weak, but because it creates leverage. When others know who matters to you, they know where pressure will hurt most. History is filled with rulers who survive direct attacks, only to be destroyed through their families, their partners, their closest allies. Threats rarely strike the fortress first. They strike the heart behind it. In the modern world, this danger wears a softer mask. Oversharing relationships, broadcasting devotion, advertising emotional dependence. Each post, each declaration, each display maps your priorities for anyone watching. Privacy is not secrecy born of fear. It is protection born of intelligence. You do not hide love to deny it. You hide it to preserve it. The less people know about who you value most, the fewer angles exist to wound you. Let them see respect. Let them see stability. But do not give them a blueprint of your emotional center. A guarded circle is a resilient circle. Machiavelli understood that power is not just about what you can do. It is about what others cannot touch. And love, when exposed, is always the first thing they reach for. Protect it, because once they know who you love, they know how to hurt you. The seventh thing Machiavelli would tell you never to reveal is your need. This is the most destructive exposure of all, because it quietly collapses every power dynamic the moment it's sensed. You don't have to say it out loud. You don't have to confess it. Human beings can feel need the way animals sense fear. It leaks through tone, timing, posture, urgency. And once it's detected, the game is over. The moment someone realizes you need them more than they need you, the balance tilts permanently. Respect erodes. Leverage disappears. Terms worsen. And what was once mutual becomes transactional. Machiavelli saw this in every negotiation between princes. The ruler who appeared desperate was squeezed. The one who appeared indifferent dictated terms, not because indifference is cruel, but because detachment signals abundance. And abundance is power. Need announces scarcity. When you need approval, people withhold it. When you need the deal, the price goes up. When you need the relationship, affection becomes conditional. The other side doesn't even have to be malicious. The shift happens automatically. Humans respond to incentives, not ideals. This is why desperation is so dangerous. It strips mystery. It broadcasts dependence. It tells the world exactly where you are trapped. Look at how this plays out in everyday life. A man wants a job too badly. He accepts less than he's worth. He over-explains. He overperforms. He signals that walking away is not an option. The employer senses it and exploits it. In dating, the same rule applies with ruthless consistency. When one person needs the relationship more, the other controls the pace, the rules, and the emotional temperature. Not because they're evil, but because the dynamic allows it. Need kills polarity. It kills tension. It kills respect. Machiavelli understood that power always flows toward the one who can leave. The man who has options does not chase. He chooses. And that choice is felt, even when it is never spoken. The antidote to need is not pretending you don't care. It is building alternatives, always. Options are freedom made visible. They change how you speak, how you wait, how you respond. When you have options, silence becomes comfortable, patience becomes natural, urgency disappears. This is why Machiavellian power is always built quietly, in layers. Multiple paths, multiple exits, multiple sources of validation, income, meaning. No single person, deal, or outcome is allowed to become a choke point. The moment something becomes a choke point, it controls you. So you design your life to avoid that at all costs. You diversify your identity. You detach your self-worth from outcomes. You cultivate independence not as isolation, but as insurance. And slowly, something shifts in how people experience you. You become calm where others rush. Grounded where others plead. Measured where others spill emotion. And people feel it. They may not understand it intellectually, but they respond to it instinctively. Because need repels. Self-sufficiency attracts. At this point, the pattern should be clear. Never show your full strength, because predictability invites preparation. Never reveal your plans, because anticipation creates interference. Never display your resources, because visibility attracts parasites. Never expose your weaknesses, because they will be weaponized. Never show your emotions, because reactions give away control. Never advertise who you love, because love creates leverage. And never reveal your need, because desperation hands away power. Each of these rules violates modern conditioning. You've been told openness is virtuous, that sharing builds trust, that visibility equals value. Machiavelli would tell you this is how men get destroyed, not because they are wrong morally, but because they are naive strategically. He lived in a world where princes were poisoned by friends, betrayed by family, and undone by their own honesty. And that world has not disappeared. It has simply learned to smile better. The costumes have changed, the psychology has not. Every environment is still governed by perception, leverage, timing, and control. Those who understand this move carefully. Those who ignore it bleed quietly. This does not make you fake. It makes you selective. A man with boundaries is not dishonest. He is disciplined. He chooses what to reveal, when to reveal it, and to whom. He understands that truth without context is a liability. Think of yourself not as an open book, but as a locked archive. Some information is public, some is classified, and some is never meant to be accessed at all. That structure is what makes you formidable. When people cannot read you fully, they respect the space around you. When they cannot predict you, they hesitate. When they cannot control you, they adjust. This is the quiet architecture of power Machiavelli tried to teach. Not cruelty, not manipulation, but self-preservation in a world that punishes exposure. The man who survives is not the most honest. He is the most careful, the most deliberate, the most restrained. And restraint, when practiced consistently, becomes authority. In the next part, we will pull all of this together, not as rules to follow mechanically, but as a way of moving through the world that makes you untouchable. Because once you understand what not to show, you finally understand what to become. Now comes the part most people resist, because it forces a final shift in how you see yourself and the world. Everything you've heard so far feels counterintuitive because you were raised on a comforting lie. That honesty is always rewarded. That openness guarantees connection. That good intentions protect you. Machiavelli shattered that illusion 5 centuries ago, not to make men cruel, but to make them survive. He understood something modern culture refuses to admit. The world does not operate on morality. It operates on perception, leverage, and timing. And until you accept that, you will keep mistaking exposure for virtue and wonder why it costs you everything. The men who last, the ones who move through chaos untouched, are not the loudest or the most sincere. They are the most selective. They reveal just enough to function, never enough to be controlled. This is not about living in paranoia. It is about living with clarity. When you stop showing everything, something remarkable happens. People begin to project onto you. They fill the silence with their assumptions. Some will see strength. Others will feel unease. Both reactions work in your favor. Because the man who is not fully understood becomes a psychological problem for others to solve. Silence creates gravity. Restraint creates authority. Mystery creates respect. You've been trained to explain yourself, to clarify, to justify, to soften your edges so no one feels uncomfortable. Machiavelli would tell you that every unnecessary explanation lowers your position. It signals uncertainty. It tells others you need to be understood. Powerful men do not need to be understood. They need to be felt. This is why the most influential figures in any room often speak the least. Their words are sparse, deliberate, and final. They don't rush to correct misunderstandings. They allow ambiguity to work for them. Ambiguity forces others to slow down. And slowing others down gives you control of the pace. At this stage, your task is not to hide out of fear, but to govern your exposure like a ruler governs borders. Open where it serves you. Closed where it protects you. Neutral where it confuses. You stop volunteering information. You stop narrating your struggles. You stop advertising your intentions. Not because you are ashamed, but because you finally understand value. Think of your inner world as a strategic asset. Access to it must be earned, not assumed. And once you adopt that mindset, you stop bleeding power in small, invisible ways. People will notice the change before they understand it. They'll say you seem different. Calmer, harder to read, less reactive, more grounded. Some will be drawn to it. Others will feel unsettled by it. Both reactions mean it's working. Because unpredictability is not chaos. It is controlled opacity. You are no longer predictable enough to manipulate, no longer open enough to exploit, no longer desperate enough to pressure. And that alone changes how the world treats you. This is where Machiavelli's real lesson emerges. Power is not domination over others. It is self-mastery in environments designed to strip it from you. You don't need to threaten. You don't need to boast. You don't need to prove anything. The absence of exposure becomes your signal. The lack of reaction becomes your warning. People sense when someone is not accessible, and they respect what they cannot access. This does not make you cold. It makes you sovereign. A sovereign man chooses when to engage, when to withdraw, and when to let silence do the work. He does not confuse being open with being free. He knows that freedom comes from options, distance, and discipline. The world is full of people who show everything and wonder why they are exhausted, betrayed, and replaceable. You are no longer one of them. From now on, you move differently. You build quietly. You observe longer. You speak less. You reveal selectively. You let others underestimate you while you prepare. And when the moment comes, when the mask drops, when action is required, you do not explain. You act. That is Machiavelli's law. Not cruelty, not deception, but survival through intelligence. In a world where everyone is searching for weakness, the man with no visible vulnerabilities becomes untouchable. And once you understand that, nothing and no one can move you again.